This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Get a whole month free at mubi.com/skipintro. They sure don't make films like they used to, do they? Oh wait, that's not Top Gun from 1986. That's Top Gun Maverick from 2022. I guess they do make some movies like they used to. If Top Gun Maverick is one thing, it's nostalgic. I mean, the list of things it rehashes from the first film are truly mind-boggling. The films start with the same music over the same exposition text, before a near shot-for-shot remake of this montage set to the iconic Kenny Loggins song, Danger Zone. Danger Zone! In both movies, the first scene involves Tom Cruise's Maverick pulling off a stunt that infuriates his commanding officer before being sent to the Top Gun program.
Son, your ego is writing checks your body can't cash.
Yet you can't get a promotion, you won't retire, and despite your best efforts, you refuse to die.
In both movies, Tom Cruise argues about a hard deck and does some funky inverted flying shtick. In both movies, there's a shoehorned love interest that makes no sense whatsoever. And in both movies, there's some fun beach ball games between buff bros. Alliteration. It's the kind of nostalgia that makes your dad put on his aviators and tell you about how things were different back in his day. And while that might seem like a rootin' tootin' shootin' good time, I think that it actually requires a bit more of a look under the hood to figure out what exactly all this nostalgia is saying and who exactly is saying it. As it turns out, the military worked very closely in the production of both Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick. I mean, Navy officials even admitted in memos that they worked with Jerry Bruckheimer and Tony Scott on the first film because, quote, it completed the rehabilitation of the military's image, which had been savaged by the Vietnam War. In their assistance agreement for Maverick, the Department of Defense specifically stated that they would review the script's thematics and, quote, weave in key talking points relevant to the aviation community. Whatever that means.
I don't mean to seem too glib by asking you this question, but there was an expose, quote unquote, recently published about how this film is military propaganda, which I think a lot of people, even those who are inclined to agree with that point of view, found to be kind of a joke. Do you have any misgivings?
No,
any at all?
Entirely because
like
of the, I was joking about the socio-political landscape, but like, do you really even have to think about the world while you're in this movie? It's not real. It's not like this isn't about like imperialism.
Well, Chris Ryan, acclaimed podcaster, former colleague, I have misgivings. Top Gun Maverick might seem like a dumb movie, a fun trip down Nostalgia Boulevard, which is right next to Memory Lane. But they actually have a lot to say about political and social issues, whether you're paying attention or not. And I think it's worth looking at what kind of ideas are being promoted by the military itself. Welcome to Copaganda, a series of videos exploring the portrayal of the police on television and how that portrayal has shaped our understanding of who the police are and what they should be. Wait a second. Why am I talking about Top Gun? It's not a TV show, and it's also not about the police. So why is it in this series about the police on TV? Well, viewer, I wanted to. What I think Top Guns 1 and 2 really demonstrate is how the production process can influence a story. In the very first episode of this series, we covered how the LAPD helped start the cop show genre back in the 1950s by setting up a trade of sorts. The creators of the show would get access to case files, props, permits, and police extras that could help brand their show as authentic. In return, the LAPD got to be involved in the writing process. Stuff they didn't want anyone to think about, like the fact that the LAPD was segregated at the time, would get axed from scripts. And this partnership put forward a very specific view of the police. If you've seen the Last Week Tonight episode about Law & Order, then you know this dynamic is alive and well today on TV.
And it blasts that fantasy at you in endless reruns and marathons in the guise of very well-produced, extremely entertaining TV. But underneath it all, it is a commercial. And a commercial produced by a man who is, in his own words, unabashedly pro-law enforcement.
It's a great video, and I'm certainly glad that they tackled the entire Law & Order extended universe because that seemed so daunting for me. But stay in your lane, Oliver. I'm the Copaganda guy, okay? But this quid pro quo relationship isn't reserved just for the police and television. A very similar dynamic is at work with the military, portraying a kind of world police aesthetic for the American Armed Services. I talked about this idea in the MCU Team America World Police video, but I want to talk about it a little differently today. First off, the MCU has an on-again, off-again relationship with military assistance. Second, I think that a lot of people might know about the military's engagement in entertainment, but I'm not sure that everyone realizes how Top Gun Maverick is kind of an optimized version of American patriotism military culture. So, what are those key talking points? What are the movies designed to do? And is that sweet, sweet nostalgia that we love so much actually an essential part of Top Gun Maverick's message? People can be quick to dismiss accusations of propaganda in Hollywood. And you might be thinking the same thing. You might have clicked this video to trigger yourself and write an angry comment about how I'm a little soy snowflake, which I am. Not the soy part, I don't like soy, but the snowflake part, that's 100% true. I'm very delicate and sensitive, but please be nice with your angry comment, please. Thank you. Don't let my mustache confuse you. I am definitely a snowflake. You're probably typing something in the comments right now like, psh, it's not propaganda. We live in the land of the free, baby. This ain't North Korea. This movie isn't being made by the government, right? And you'd be right. Yeah, see? I'm a total snowflake. I've given up completely. Man, the fact that I'm sick and stuffed up and sound nasally is not helping my case either. Top Gun Maverick and other Hollywood films aren't completely written, produced, and directed by the US government. But don't get me wrong, the military still has a lot of influence in Hollywood.
We were concerned about, will the military allow us to do it? Because I didn't want to get involved in a movie that didn't get made. I really want to get something made because we had written 6 pictures before this and not one of them got shot. So we were concerned about, look, if the Navy doesn't give us the gear, it's not going to look right.
We went through a long process of trying to get the Navy involved in the project. You can't make this movie without the F-14s. And at the time, the technology isn't as advanced as it is today, so you couldn't do the CG work that the movie needed. It would have been enormously costly, and in the end, it wouldn't look as good.
This means that if you want to use authentic military equipment in your movie, you have to play ball. And they probably aren't going to let you say anything that critical of the military. For example, some of the most famous and successful films about the Vietnam War were denied assistance because of their critical message, and spent years in development hell. Movies like Apocalypse Now, Platoon, Good Morning Vietnam, and Born on the 4th of July. Oh hey look, there's Tom Cruise. For decades, the Department of Defense's film office, because of course they have a film office, that's your tax money hard at work, baby, has argued that their mission was simply to promote authenticity and dignity of military representation, which is pretty open to interpretation. Of course, you don't have to work with the Department of Defense. I would argue, maybe, you shouldn't. The issue is that that equipment is so expensive that you can't possibly make your film without DoD financial support. Top Gun Maverick had a huge budget, over $170 million, which wouldn't have even been enough to buy 3 F-35 fighter jets, because they cost nearly $80 million a pop. Movies that do take those discounted rates in exchange for working with the military tend to have a much higher production value for less money, which is a pretty good deal if you're a studio deciding which movies you want to greenlight. And the notes that the military film office gives aren't just general suggestions or ideas. Sometimes they're line-by-line changes.
For example, in the original script for the World War II movie Wind Talkers, there was a character called the Dentist, who pulls gold teeth from the mouths of dead Japanese soldiers. The Marine entertainment officer wanted it gone. The Dentist character displays distinctly un-Marine behavior, he wrote. But it's no secret that this kind of racism-fueled trophy-taking was commonplace in the Pacific. Eugene Sledge describes the practice as widespread in his famous memoir, which is required reading for Marine officers.
That's a clip from Theaters of War, the upcoming documentary from Professor Roger Stahl, who studies propaganda at the University of Georgia. It's about the broader military entertainment complex and how documents recently obtained through the Freedom of Information Act depict a far more prolific amount of censorship than we thought, even in places you'd never expect, like Cupcake Wars. This is in part because in 1988, the Film Office expanded their mission to promote public understanding, recruiting, and official government policy. Officially, they are no longer just about authenticity and respect, but also about spinning military policies to the public, getting the public to support the military as an institution, and maybe even join it. Which brings us back to Top Gun. These directive changes occurred just 2 years after the massive success of the first Top Gun film in 1986, where the Navy saw a huge opportunity to potentially snag some moviegoers to enlist. Although regulations prevented the Navy from explicitly using the film, in cities across the country, recruiters set up manned tables outside theaters. As I mentioned earlier, Top Gun was seen by the Navy in internal documents as part of an effort to rehabilitate the image of the armed forces after the debacle that was Vietnam. And it did so by making fighter pilots look really fucking cool.
But it's time to bust the tower.
Damn son of a bitch!
Oh yeah. The first Top Gun film reads more like a high school sports movie or shonen anime, where a bunch of students compete with each other to see who's the best in their class, while also learning the value of friendship.
You are still dangerous. You can be my wingman anytime. Bullshit. You can be mine.
I'm not even making up this idea about it being a locker room sports movie either. The writer of the film, Jack Epps, describes the film this way in Danger Zone, the making of Top Gun.
That this was just not flying, as I knew it as a private pilot, but this was a sporting event. That this was one of the greatest athletic things I'd ever been involved with in my life. So I came out of that flight with a sense that the key to this movie is how athletic these guys are. So my partner and I approached it and we said, well, wait a minute, what this really is about sports. If we take the movie aside, from my point of view as a writer, Top Gun is a sports movie.
Like any great sports movie with locker rooms, the first Top Gun has a ton of repressed homoerotic sexual tension.
Top Gun was created to teach ACM, air combat maneuvering, dogfighting.
This gives me a hard-on.
By the end of Vietnam, that ratio was back up to 12-1.
Don't tease me.
Ooh, baby. I know it's become like a cliche to talk about how gay the first Top Gun film is, but that's not even subtext. Like, you don't have to read between the lines. 15 minutes into the movie, one guy turns to his lover, co-pilot, and says, "This is making me hard," which is met with a deep, soul-staring gaze and the line, "Don't tease me." It is gay, it is campy, and I'm here for it.
That's right. Nice. Man, I am dangerous.
The majority of the first film's political commentary is really half-assed. There's a mysterious enemy that Maverick engages with in both the opening and ending scenes of the film, although in 1986, I think we can pretty safely assume that they're the Soviets. There's also this storyline about Maverick's dad and his mysterious death during the Vietnam War.
And let's not bullshit, Maverick. Your family name ain't the best in the Navy.
We wouldn't let you in the academy because you're Duke Mitchell's kid.
He disappeared in an F4, November 5th, 1965. The stink of it was, he screwed up.
So what's the deal? Was he a bad pilot? Did he abandon his fellow soldiers? No. As it turns out, Maverick's dad was actually super duper heroic, saving a number of his fellow pilots from certain death.
Yeah, your old man did it right.
So why has Maverick never heard of this? Well, here's the answer the film provides.
How come I never heard that before?
Well, that's not something the State Department tells dependents when the battle occurred over the wrong line on some map.
So if that wasn't clear, Maverick's dad was doing stuff over the wrong line of some map, which is also known as a country's border. Lest you think Top Gun is secretly pro-open borders, I think what they're actually subtly saying is that Maverick's dad flew in Operation Menu or Operation Freedom Deal, which were covert missions to bomb the living shit out of Cambodia for like 3 years. Notably, we were not at war with Cambodia, and estimates of civilian casualties in those missions ranged from 50,000 to 150,000. So what I'm hearing is that Maverick's dad was involved in some war crime stuff, but he was a hero, so don't think about it too hard.
Yeah, your old man did it right.
Now, this line comes and goes far faster than I've just spent breaking it down, but it is indicative of the general tenor of the film. Our pilots are heroes, no matter what it is they're involved with. Don't question them or their mission. Anything that gets in the way of that hero worship is just dumb bureaucracy. For what it's worth, Top Gun is a very silly movie.
Maverick, you just did an incredibly brave thing.
What you should have done was land your plane.
I'm kind of surprised that it has the legacy it does. Compared to the sequel, the plot is kind of stakeless and all over the place. The action isn't even really that impressive. It's really campy, and honestly, watching it, I get kind of a Talladega Nights vibe from it.
Okay, man, let's turn and burn. It's a little bit of shake and then fake. Shake and bake.
Gentlemen, this school is about combat. There are no points for second place.
If you ain't first, you're last.
4 years after Top Gun premiered, while Tom Cruise was promoting his film Born on the 4th of July, an Oliver Stone project very much opposed to the American war machine, he even acknowledged to Playboy of all places that Top Gun was just supposed to be a mindless fun time. Okay, some people felt that Top Gun was a right-wing film to promote the Navy, and a lot of kids loved it. But I want the kids to know that that's not the way war is. That Top Gun was just an amusement park ride, a fun film with a PG-13 rating that was not supposed to be reality. That's why I didn't go on and make Top Gun 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. That would have been irresponsible.
36 years later, and here we are. It's surreal.
You see, Top Gun isn't real, and it's not trying to be. Sure, the military worked intimately with the production to specifically ensure a high level of realness and authenticity, but don't think about it too hard. Of course, the legacy of Top Gun isn't just fun. It has become a symbol of American military might, and it's that status that Maverick builds off of. I mean, Maverick premiered on the USS Midway.
We are on a carrier in San Diego. We are floating in the ocean right now. This is crazy. Holy smokes, that's beautiful.
While Vietnam is far in the past, there are a whole new slew of military failures for the Department of Defense to whitewash. From the 2-decade-long war in Afghanistan that ended suddenly and catastrophically, to the invasion of Iraq, launched under lies about weapons of mass destruction and led to the deaths of over 1 million people. Top Gun Maverick doesn't really touch on any of those events, even in a throwaway line like its predecessor.
And the next thing I know, you're off to Bosnia, then Iraq, both times.
But that doesn't mean that Maverick isn't intensely interested in promoting an agenda. I mean, the Department of Defense essentially paid Tom Cruise and Jerry Bruckheimer to weave in key talking points. But is it really that political? Isn't it just a fun time? What actually is in this film? Let me say here that I saw Top Gun Maverick in theaters and was absolutely thrilled. It is undeniably one of the most exciting action movies ever made. Seeing the actors actually in the cockpits reacting to G-force is intense. Advancements in camera technology bring us closer than ever to these fighter jets, and shooting it all on IMAX? I mean, look at this. It looks amazing. Now that I've seen Maverick, Top Gun 1 looks like shit. Terrible. Are there even any planes in it? I can't tell because they're too far away. From now on, Top Gun 1 will only be remembered for how incredibly horny it is. I mean, the movie was ridiculous. Tom Cruise grieves the loss of Goose by staring at himself in a mirror while wearing tighty whities. Just incredible stuff. Top Gun Maverick is almost a textbook definition of a dumb action movie. You don't have to think too hard about the plot. It just wants you to look at the cool stuff and go, whoa, that's some cool stuff, which I did. Now that alone carries a message, whether you want to admit it or not. It marvels at our military might and prowess. It says, hey, look at this cool ass plane that kills people, isn't that a cool ass plane? And that kind of imagery doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to everyone. Journalist Ahmed Twaij, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, wrote in Al Jazeera about seeing the film at the Cannes Film Festival, and how the military fanfare about it wasn't necessarily what the filmmakers intended. As the film's cast took to the red carpet at the prestigious film festival, several fighter jets started to roar above us in the sky. Tom Cruise and others in his entourage responded with glee, and the Hollywood star even raised his fist to greet the jet pilots performing in his honor. Having spent time in Iraq during the war against ISIL, and being acutely aware of the ongoing war in nearby Ukraine, however, I instinctively thought we were under attack and ducked for cover. What a loser ducking for cover from jets that kill people. So there is a baseline message of American military equals good, simply by being an exciting action film that features military hardware. But is that all the film is saying? I don't think so. Like I mentioned before, in the first Top Gun, the enemy was left laughably unnamed.
The enemy's dangerous. But right now, you're worse than the enemy.
Even though the other side denies the incident, congratulations, and has wandered into foreign territory. If you witness a hostile act...
But everybody knew who we were talking about, right? I mean, this was a year after Rocky Balboa fought the Russian in Rocky IV. The enemy flew MiG-28 fighter jets, which, although technically never existing, MiG is the name of a Russian aircraft corporation. Even if the conflict was technically with some other country, you could be damn sure it was just a proxy war with the Soviets. But since 1986, the politics of the world have changed a little. I mean, I wasn't around back then, but all the books say things are different now. For those of you even younger than me, books are these like paper things with pages. It's like a screen, but with worse graphics. In 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved, and the Cold War ended. The existential enemy that the United States had situated itself in opposition to for over 4 decades evaporated. But while Soviet Russia might not be around anymore, Top Gun Maverick still leaves their enemy very vague.
But what the enemy doesn't know is your limits.
That's because the enemy knows no one is insane enough to try and fly below them.
The moment those tomahawks hit, the enemy will know you're coming.
The enemy is literally faceless, with darkened visors that make them almost look like robots. Their jets aren't MiGs anymore. They're ambiguous 5th generation fighters.
That's because 5th generation fighters wait at an airbase nearby. In a head-to-head with these planes and your F-18s, you're dead.
Now, the film tells us that they are the enemy because they are enriching uranium outside of a NATO treaty.
An unsanctioned uranium enrichment plant, built in violation of a multilateral NATO treaty. The uranium produced there represents a direct threat to our allies in the region.
It could be Russia again, but they wouldn't be prevented from enriching uranium. North Korea and China are always boogeymen in the news, but they're on the other side of the world from NATO. The terrain could be, but doesn't scream Iran, and I'm not sure Iran would have the fighter jets to dogfight with the American war machine. So what country could possibly check all of those boxes? None. There aren't any. And this gives the idea of a nameless enemy kind of a different meaning. This isn't a wink wink, these are the Soviets kind of thing. This is a the enemy could be anyone kind of thing. Sure, Maverick doesn't need to concern itself with the specific geopolitics of the world to be entertaining. But I do find it a little disturbing that a movie that was significantly financially backed by the US Armed Forces is telling you not to think about who we're fighting. Just don't worry about it. Creating an enemy completely devoid of details paves the way for a number of good propaganda tactics. First, it dehumanizes a potential enemy. Their background, their politics, their reasons, those are unimportant. The film literally goes out of its way to wave away anyone who thinks too much about what's happening in the film.
You might know what this special detachment is all about?
No, mission's a mission. They don't confront me. What I want to know, who's going to be team leader?
It's Harvard, Yale, Omaha. Shit, that's Fritz.
What the hell kind of mission is this?
That's not the question we should be asking.
The other thing this allows the film to do is project any number of attributes onto this nameless enemy. And perhaps even more importantly, allows the audience to quickly map any potential enemy onto them. No, the enemy isn't China, North Korea, Russia, or Iran, but it could be. This kind of ambiguity also allows for the whitewashing of American military blunders. From Twice Again, the film's main premise is that the US has gained credible intelligence that an unnamed country has built a facility capable of developing weapons of mass destruction, and an elite fighter jet team is tasked with destroying it. If that sounds familiar, it's because the US used almost exactly the same intel to try and justify its 2003 invasion of Iraq. Cool, fun, and also cool. But having a completely theoretical enemy doesn't just allow for some fun revisionist history. It also means that the enemy can be whatever you want them to be. This dynamic dehumanizes the enemy, reducing them to NPCs. It's a kind of mindset that makes it easier to do things like conduct drone strikes. The American military talks a big game about how clinical they are with their drone strikes, and the Biden administration has claimed they've tightened the rules on drone operations, but we know that on August 29th, 2021, just one day before we left Afghanistan, 10 innocent people, including 7 children, were assassinated in a drone strike. And that's not really an outlier. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism estimates significant civilian casualties in countries we aren't even at war with, like Somalia, Pakistan, and Yemen. And it's really easy to imagine how actions like this come to pass when we think of targets as nameless, faceless, dehumanized enemies. Just don't worry about it. Sometimes the enemy is even contradicting things. In Top Gun Maverick, the enemy is both too strong and too weak. The film is quick to remind us that the US military is strong and undefeated, and nothing could ever truly challenge them.
You're looking at the only naval aviator on active duty with a confirmed air-to-air kill.
Stop.
Mind you, the other guy was in a museum piece from the Korean War.
You are talking about the best fighter pilots on the planet.
You're all Top Gun graduates. The elite. The best of the best.
But at the same time, this mission forces the Navy to use older aircraft, matched up against incredibly advanced anti-aircraft weaponry and fifth-generation fighter jets that need to be avoided at all costs.
That was yesterday. The enemy's new fifth-generation fighter has leveled the playing field. Details are few, but you can be sure we no longer possess the technological advantage.
I like how that speech takes place in front of a comically large American flag that they hung in the hangar for like a class of 12 people. Like that was someone's job. Yet, when it comes to the climax of the film, Maverick is not only able to engage with these fifth-generation fighters and win, but is able to do so in a broken F-14 that he literally found on the sidewalk.
An F-14?
I shot down 3 MiGs in one of those.
We don't even know if that bag of ass can fly. Oh my God. This thing is so old.
This hand-waving of critical thinking goes deeper in the film too. One of the central ideas in Maverick is,
don't think, just do.
Don't think, just do. Don't think, just do. Don't think, just do.
Top Gun Maverick encourages its characters to abandon thinking, not just in a don't question the mission sense, but also in a more general sense. Pilots are encouraged to trust their instincts. Action is taken for the sake of action. In the first film, this is portrayed by Maverick being told to keep flying until he gets over Goose's death.
Can't get back in the saddle, won't engage.
It's only been a few days.
You know, he just might not make it back.
Keep sending him up.
In the sequel, we hear this constantly. There's not enough time to make a rational decision up there. You just have to do. You have to act.
Look, I don't mean to criticize. You're conservative, that's all.
Lieutenant?
We're going into combat, son, on a level no living pilot's ever seen. Not even him. That's no time to be thinking about the past.
Now, you may be angrily typing in the comments again. Don't think, just do is great advice. My high school football coach told me to do the same thing. You prep and hone those instincts, and then you can go on autopilot up there. Well, not real autopilot, that's for pussies, but you know what I mean, hoorah. And to you, kind commenter, I say this, I actually agree. In a split second, you can't be going down your checklist trying to figure out what the best course of action is.
The MiG has you in his gun sight. What were you thinking at this point?
You don't have time to think up there. If you think, you're dead.
But between this idea, discouraging thinking about the mission or enemy, and Maverick literally throwing out the book on planes because you don't need to know it, there's kind of a lot of anti-intellectualism going on here. Not just in a fun, dumb way, but in kind of a hostile way. There's almost an inherent distrust of those who need to think about things. Bob, the nerdy pilot.
Bob?
No, your call sign.
Bob.
Is constantly bullied and is the only character who crashes. When Bradley saves Mav's life, Mav is furious because he was only in that position because he saved Bradley's life first.
What the hell were you even thinking?
You told me not to think.
This is actually a culmination of Bradley's character arc. He goes from a conservative pilot who is more concerned with his team staying in one piece than the completion of the mission.
Rooster, we're late. We're alive. We'll make up time in the straightaway. We are not gonna make it. Just trust me. Maintain your speed. We can make it.
Why are you dead? You're team leader up there. Why is your team dead?
Sir, he's the only one who made it to the target.
A minute late.
But by the end of the film, he's embraced the danger zone. He's out of his own head.
Come on, kid, you can do it. Don't think. Just do it. Jesus, Rooster, not that fast.
And this plays into another idea that the film traffics. The idea that everyone is educated to become a hero. The characters of the film, Maverick included, are instructed from early on that this mission will be a suicide one.
No, someone's not coming back from this. Nice. Please, don't ask me to send someone else to die.
Every mission has its risks. These pilots accept that.
But they are all trained to become not just willing, but eager to accept death, or at least a death in service to the cause, which again is pretty freaking ambiguous. Maverick heroically sacrifices himself. Then Bradley heroically sacrifices himself, all in a mission where the whole team has been asked to heroically sacrifice themselves. I mean, as far as hero worship goes, the entire F-14 sequence is just Bradley in the backseat cheerleading Mav.
Yeah, man, splash one, splash one. You got him, man, you got him. Take it. Come on, man, do some of that pilot shit. You got him, man.
And speaking of that F-14, there's a cult of tradition going on in Top Gun Maverick.
Seems like we're not the only ones holding on to old relics.
The film begins with Maverick saving his experimental pilot division from Ed Harris, an admiral nicknamed the Drone Ranger because he cut spending for manned pilot divisions in order to fund drone programs.
The Drone Ranger. He wants our budget for his unmanned program.
He's on his way to kill the test and shut us down personally.
Maverick ends up ejecting out of a plane going Mach 10 and doesn't die. And that's still more believable than the Pentagon cutting funding for any program at all. Over the course of the film, Maverick is constantly told that his time has passed.
The future is coming, and you're not in it.
You don't have to take this job. But let me be clear. This will be your last post.
But Maverick is also the only person who can lead the mission.
The end is inevitable, Maverick. Your kind is headed for extinction.
Maybe so, sir. But not today.
Turns out that in all these years, the military never did it better than they did in 1986. This cult of tradition also places a lot of faith in American pilots.
The answer to that question will come down to the pilot in the box.
It's not the plane, sir. It's the pilot. It's not the plane. It's the pilot.
And there are almost two opposing messages to take from this. The first is a kind of superiority, an idea that American pilots are inherently better than those of our enemies simply by being American. And the second is that we have somehow lost our technological edge and that we should probably invest even more money in the military.
Details are few, but you can be sure we no longer possess the technological advantage.
Despite being far and away the most expensive military ever. But of course, the biggest way that Top Gun Maverick embraces a cult of tradition is through its heavy dose of nostalgia. As an actual film, Top Gun Maverick is itself a bit of a throwback to a day long past. The movie is bolstered by one of the last remaining capital M movie stars in Tom Cruise, a man who is dedicated to a theater experience. It is the 11th highest grossing film of all time, behind sequels in far larger sagas, James Cameron movies, and Disney children's films. I realize that Top Gun Maverick is a sequel, but none of the other sequels on this list are the first sequel. Cruise famously delayed the film's release, refusing to entertain the thought of a video-on-demand or streaming option that most studios resorted to during the heights of the COVID-19 pandemic. He truly hates it when you watch his stuff at home.
To that end, we'd like a moment of your time to talk to you about video interpolation.
Video interpolation, or motion smoothing, is a digital effect on most high-definition televisions and is intended to reduce motion blur in sporting events and other high-definition programming.
The unfortunate side effect is that it makes most movies look like they were shot on high-speed video rather than film.
He's definitely right about that, though. Motion smoothing is cursed, and you should all turn it off immediately. In some ways, you can read Top Gun Maverick as a kind of movie about Tom Cruise, by Tom Cruise, and for Tom Cruise. Think of drones as streaming, a future we all know is coming and in many ways is already here, and Maverick as the movie star-led blockbuster.
Your kind is headed for extinction.
Maybe so, sir. But not today.
It feels like a movie from an older time period. There's no teasing of a future franchise, and you don't need to have seen the first movie to appreciate Maverick by any means. The result is that for both those who have and haven't seen the first Top Gun, there's a palpable sense of nostalgia. And that's not just something the film uses, it's the entire point of Top Gun Maverick. When I sat down to watch Top Gun for the first time after having seen Maverick, I was blown away by how mediocre it is as a movie. The action is hard to follow, and the story is there, I guess? I love how legendary film critic Pauline Kael described Top Gun in 1986. When aerial dogfights are staged with jets, the pilots are barely visible. You can't tell them apart. And it's also quick and depersonalized that there's nothing to see but hunks of steel flashing by. What is this commercial selling? It's just selling. Top Gun is a recruiting poster that isn't concerned with recruiting, but with being a poster. For Kale and for myself, the best parts of that first film are how incredibly horny and queer it is. Maybe unintentionally.
I'd like to bust your butt, but I can't.
I want some butts!
30 seconds, Wolfman, I'm coming in.
So Maverick referencing that early film, hearkening back to the glory days of cinema, I don't know, were they even that great? And Maverick gets rid of all of the queerest and horniest bits. The sexual tension between Maverick and his other pilots is replaced with a father-son dynamic with Rooster. They don't even say butts once in Top Gun Maverick, and all of the grieving is fully clothed. Disappointing. In some ways, Maverick is interested in whitewashing the legacy of its first film. In 1991, at the annual Tailhook Association Symposium in Las Vegas, over 100 Marine and Navy aviators allegedly sexually harassed and assaulted 83 women and 7 men over the course of just 3 days.
It all played out on the hotel's 3rd floor, where convention after-parties turned ugly. Drunken aviators roamed the halls, exposing their genitals and attacking unsuspecting Navy and civilian women.
People were actually closing in and trying to pull my clothes off. I got knocked to the floor, and I kicked, and I punched, and I actually bit somebody who was reaching down my blouse.
Lead investigator Greg Gransback described a Top Gun mentality among officers, and the DoD investigation detailed a culture where such behavior was expected, and that the Tailhook Symposium was replete with traditions. And yeah, there's some pretty cringy and gross flirting that Maverick engages in during Top Gun 1.
This is what I call a target-rich environment. You live your life between your legs, Mav.
Here he is, following a woman who has just turned him down into the ladies' bathroom and cornering her to proposition her for sex.
It's a long cruise, was it, sailor?
It's too long.
What'd you want to do? Just drop right down on the tile and go for it?
I actually had this counter in mind.
Whew, good thing the DoD was working intimately with Bruckheimer and Tony Scott to make sure that Top Gun 1 was authentic, because yeah, that's pretty much exactly how things were going down back then. Top Gun Maverick wants you to forget about those things. It has a lady pilot who isn't harassed or anything.
Leaving your wingman. There's a strategy I haven't seen in a while. He called you a man, Phoenix. You gonna take that?
So long as he doesn't call you a man.
Maybe you think that's progress, but I think when you tie the film so closely to nostalgia, it tends to soften the rougher edges of the past, which is kind of what nostalgia does.
Nostalgia literally means the pain from an old wound. It's a twinge in your heart, far more powerful than memory alone. This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine.
That scene is from Mad Men. Don Draper is explaining how nostalgia can be a potent advertising device. And Mad Men itself is a show about how maybe the good old days of the 1950s and 60s weren't as great as many choose to remember. It's unflinching with its sexism and racism and alcoholism. It's about deconstructing that nostalgia. Because Don Draper's right, nostalgia is an incredibly potent emotion.
It lets us travel the way a child travels. Round and around, and back home again. To a place where we know we are loved.
Nostalgia is a time machine, but it's not something that brings us back to the historical past, but rather an emotional one. One that can be easily warped by mythology. It should be no surprise that the political right has embraced Top Gun Maverick as anti-woke, masculine, and pro-America.
It strikes me that this is one of these big successes, non-woke, apolitical, that might create the kind of model for more companies to maybe follow.
Absolutely. People wanted to see a pro-America movie. We've been kind of browbeaten for so long.
Right.
And look, even if you don't want to go and see this movie, if it's not your cup of tea, but you want to see more movies like this that do have a pro-America message, they don't have a ton of woke stuff or any that I've heard of in this movie.
No.
Just buy a ticket. Don't even go.
The other thing that Hollywood does here is it just treats the military as people who are awesome because they are awesome. There's sort of just a baseline patriotism about the film. It's never spoken. But, I mean, there are things like Tom Cruise gives a speech and he's in front of a giant American flag. The film itself is pretty red, white, and blue. And that's just assumed as the backdrop, which is the way movies used to be. So it has a real throwback feel. They get it right.
that makes sense. Conservative politics are about a return to a past world that you understood. That new social and political projects are scary and dangerous. Don't forgive student debt. I had to pay my way back in the day. What's with all these trans people coming out of the woodwork? Gay marriage somehow weakens the strength of my own marriage. But in order to create momentum for that political movement, you have to create a myth of the past. Because there's a reason we left that stuff behind. Those thematic talking points I pointed out earlier, too strong and too weak, action for action's sake, everyone is a hero, and cult of tradition, yeah, I didn't just come up with those. I got them from Italian scholar Umberto Eco in his 1995 essay, Fascism, where he outlines 14 characteristics of fascist ideologies. Plot twist, it was fascism all along! Those opposing messages of innate superiority mixed with a fear that we're falling behind, that's right out of Eco's essay too. A syncretism, a combination that must tolerate contradictions. One trait that I didn't mention was machismo, which implies both disdain for women and intolerance and condemnation of non-standard sexual habits, from chastity to homosexuality. And like I said, Top Gun Maverick pretty much erased all of the queer aspects of its predecessor. Even during that sexy, shirtless dogfight football scene, the film makes sure to let us know that Jennifer Connelly is there, being impressed by her man. The volleyball scene is just better, guys. Now, am I saying Top Gun Maverick is fascist? No. I might think that, but that's not what I'm saying here. What I am saying is that the nostalgia that Top Gun Maverick uses so intimately is certainly something that fascists, in the past, have made pillars of their movement. Nostalgia itself is not fascist, but it is a tool shared by both the movie and fascistic movements, and combined with these other talking points, it should be kind of unsurprising, considering that fascist governments model themselves after military cultures, that there are some ideas in a military-funded film that fascists might like. Left unchecked, military culture can foster troubling ideologies. If strength is a value in and of itself, then to be weak must be a failing. If America is the greatest, if we are number one, then doesn't that mean our success is dependent on crushing the competition?
A few years ago, President Reagan exclaimed, quote, "We are proud of America. We love America. America is the greatest." Now, supposedly we can love America and be proud of our country because it's so great. The implication is, however, that if it weren't so great, it wouldn't be so lovable. I started thinking, what about people from lesser lands, as we might call them? I mean, what about somebody from Luxembourg? I mean, now Luxembourg is number 122, you know. I mean, just barely ahead of San Marino in its military might. I said, what does someone from Luxembourg do? Do they go around shamefaced like this, you know? You say, you from Luxembourg? You from Luxembourg? I say, no, I'm French. No, I'm French.
When you say it like that, it sounds preposterous, right? But I think that when we place so much patriotic value on our military might, this is the implication. I talked earlier about why I chose to do an episode in a TV police series about a movie with no police in it. One of the reasons I cover TV is because I think that it is very reflexive. Movies tend to be made for a wider audience, international audiences these days, and can take years to produce. TV, not so much. There's a lot more TV, and it's made on a tighter schedule. When you have to churn out so much content so fast, you end up just putting in the news and social issues of the day. I mean, here's Blue Bloods talking about the new wave of protests and harassing people on the streets.
It's the new tactic. Organizers offering a reward for the whereabouts of whoever they're targeting and then flash mobbing them.
And who's organizing these ambushes?
Name's Connor Kelly.
Invite him up here.
He won't come.
By invite him up here, I mean send a couple of detectives to visit him in person and suggest strongly...
You're getting close to the edge here, Frank.
Suggest strongly with carefully applied pressure.
And that's your periodic reminder that Blue Bloods is a completely batshit TV show that exists and is watched by millions of old people every week, probably including your parents or grandparents. Watch my video on Blue Bloods. I also cover TV because I don't think people think about it the same way as they do with film. With film, we're intentional. You go to a theater, you buy a ticket, and you sit down in a dark room and put your phone away. TV? I mean, if you aren't looking at your phone while binging episodes of New Girl, then I don't think you're doing it right. TV lives in our homes for years at a time. It lives in the gaps of our lives, while we have time to kill, or while we're unraveling after a long day. I'm fascinated by the ideas that we absorb without even thinking about them. And like TV, Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick are almost subconscious in their messaging. In this case, they don't expect you to enlist. Studies have shown that the first film had just a modest net effect on that front. They don't expect you to buy one of those Lockheed Martin $80 million fighter jets. But they do promote an image of the military, bought and paid for by the Navy, that reduces war to sport. It separates us from any kind of human enemy. It encourages us to think about military action as an inherently cool thing. And it tells you not to think about it too much, because thinking is for dweebs. Movies like Top Gun Maverick separate machines of war, symbols of war, from the material outcomes of war. Every aspect of the film, from production to plot to thematic material to the mechanics of nostalgia, work to send a very specific idea of patriotism and Americana. This kind of blind patriotic militarism is so ingrained in our culture that sometimes we don't even look twice. We regularly see fighter jets fly over football games. We see basketball games on aircraft carriers. What I'm trying to do in this video is spotlight that so often we don't think critically about military ideology, which I don't think has a place in civilian life, despite it being a massive part of our pop culture entertainment.
I've wanted to do something like this since I saw the movie Top Gun.
So, is it silly to say Top Gun Maverick is propaganda? I don't think so. I think that it is arguably the most effective American propaganda film since Birth of a Nation. That might sound inflammatory, but I'm trying to say that as objectively as I possibly can. We studied Birth of a Nation in film school. It's a landmark film with huge historical significance. Like Top Gun Maverick, it was lauded for technical achievements and camera work, pioneering film ideas like close-ups, fade-outs, and crowd staging. Also like Maverick, it was incredibly popular and represented a lot of ideas that were super popular at the time. Then, racism, and today, American global military might. Like Maverick, it made tons of money, standing as the highest grossing film for 2 decades until it was passed by Gone with the Wind, another movie about the Confederacy. And like Maverick, it was screened on government property. Maverick premiering on a battleship and Birth of a Nation at the White House for President Woodrow Wilson, also a massive racist. Birth of a Nation was also intensely interested in creating a mythological past, portraying the Ku Klux Klan as heroic, and has been acknowledged as an inspiration for the rebirth of the Klan. Am I saying that Top Gun Maverick is going to reignite the Klan? No, of course not. But it is certainly trying to call back to a mythological past, weaponizing nostalgia to help you remember that time that made America great. Again, I think the great trick the film performs is making you think it isn't political, while promoting a number of troubling political messages that veer disturbingly close to fascism. Can you still enjoy it? That's really up to you. I'm certainly not going to judge you because I enjoyed the absolute living shit out of that movie both times I watched it. I am not trying to harsh your vibe. I don't even really think there's anything we can do about it. This is an aspect of American culture that I've always felt queasy about, and I'm not sure anything has ever made me confront it head on as much as Top Gun Maverick. But maybe by shining a light on it, more people can start to examine military media just a little more actively. Legendary French filmmaker François Truffaut once said something along the lines of, "It's impossible to make an anti-war film." The idea was that any depiction of the military is going to kind of inherently make the military look pretty badass. I think that if you only look at movies produced in America, especially with American military assistance, that's the vibe you're gonna get. But there are films from all over the world with different perspectives. Like Samuni Road, a film that mixes documentary elements and animation in order to tell the story of a Palestinian family trying to move on with their lives in the wake of the Gaza war in 2009. It's the kind of film that reminds us not just of the fireworks that war can produce, but also who's on the other end of those fireworks. And it's available for you to watch right now with this video's sponsor, Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from around the globe. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there is always something new to discover. With Mubi, each and every film is hand-selected. It's like your own personal film festival, streaming anytime, anywhere. Mubi has a ton of great films sharing perspectives like this, from Rosa Rosé, a film sharing the experiences of those living through fascist dictator Francisco Franco's rise to power in 1930 Spain, or General Report, a film about picking up the pieces of Spain 40 years later when Franco's reign ended. These are haunting reminders of the less aesthetically cool aspects of glorifying the military, from people who have experienced it. You can try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/skipintro. That's mubi.com/skipintro for a whole month of great cinema for free. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, you can share, you can like it, you can subscribe, or you can do nothing other than smile contentedly to yourself. Sometimes that's all the reward you need. If you'd like to support this series about Copaganda and the portrayal of police and American military world police, you can head over to Patreon to support the channel there. It's a great way to get some extra perks, bonus content, and to help me keep the lights on during those long, lonely nights of research. Look, I'm not gonna beg you, but only because I don't think it would work. You are smart, beautiful, and proud, and can't be shamed into helping me, or flattered, you sexy thing. The next video in this series is going to be about David Simon's follow-up to The Wire, We Own This City, covering the messy bits of police reform and those sexy, sexy consent decrees. Talk at you soon.